Well, it's time to look at another favorite of mine. I'm kind of doing this whole good vibes only summer thing, and what a better album to kind of kick this all off with. Now, I've already reviewed Moon Safari's Bloomjud album. You can check that out there. I did that earlier this year, and I figured I might as well talk about where it all started with their first album. So, yeah, let's dive into their first studio album. A Doorway to Summer by Moon Safari. So, you guys should know Moon Safari by now if you've been watching my channel. They're one of my all-time favorite modern progressive rock bands. They got their start in the mid-2000s, and they haul from Sweden. So some great symphonic prog, and symphonic in a very real sense. They really use a blending of harmonies. And they're one of the few bands where like almost every single member of the band sings at one point. Like they don't really have any clear-cut lead singer. Everybody kind of takes their time and harmonizes with one another. So really, really beautiful work on this. And they have this very great, airy and optimistic and pleasant and positive and all good vibes. This was coming around the time where progressive rock was getting really dark and really heavy and really like, we're gonna take this down. Like all the big styles of progressive rock were coming out with some really dark and guttural music. And then here these guys come and they're just like a literal ray of sunshine. Like they're talking about summer and how great the sun is. So we get about an hour's worth of just brilliant and stellar tracks. Like we've got 5 pieces on here. The shortest one comes in as the final track of Beyond the Door at like 6.5 minutes. But every track that precedes it is just dripping with gold. And I mean like, spoiler alert, this is a masterpiece, but like every single track on this does something brilliant. Like the first track of Doorway and then the last track of Beyond the Door, they are essentially a call and answer piece to one another. They're perfect bookmarks between one and the other. I love the fact that on Doorway, there's a moment where you can see that they're going for those really high notes and those really great notes, but they hold back a little bit. And at first you're like, that's a really strange note to hit after the setup that you did. It diminished the overall impact of it. It was almost like pulling a punch, but you realize why they did it, because in Beyond the Door, the last track, they don't pull the punch and they hit you really, really hard with that final resolution of the note that they didn't resolve in the first stretch. So such a great opening and closing call and answer sequence of tracks there. And the overall sounds and the overall like music that's found within it, it's very happy. It's, dare I say, poppy in approach. It's very accessible. It's very pleasant. It's very soothing. And they're not just relying on giant guitars or soaring keyboard solos. Like obviously they have those on this, but that's not the stars. And they're actually able to get some really great producers on here, like Thomas Bodin from the Flower Kings. And I even want to say Roland Stolt from the Flower Kings helped produce and launch this, but definitely Thomas Bodin really helped structure and provide some really fun tracks. Like he provides some Moogs and Mellotrons and synth pads on the first track, and he actually did a lot of the mastering and mixing for this. So really, really great stuff for him to help out the band, because you can see that there's like a little bit of a Flower Kings feel to it. Then we come into kind of the single off of the album, which is a Dance Across the Ocean. This one starts off with a very happy and fun, like ba-da ba ba-da ba ba-da ba ba-da ba ba-da. And it's got this infectious, jovial glow to the overall track, and I love how much more energetic it is. Like Doorway wasn't necessarily as energetic. It was much more of an opening piece. It opens up with a little bit of guitar work and just kind of the overall layers that we had on top of that. But at no point, even in the big crescendo that we have in that first track, it was never bouncy. It was never energetic. It was never very lively. It was more of just like a guy sitting out on a back deck enjoying the landscape. This one is much more actually interacting and engaging with that landscape and dancing around it. And I guess that's where the whole Dance Across the Ocean is. What I also really, really enjoy is after those two really big tracks of Doorway and Dance Across the Ocean, we come into the smaller track of A Son of Your Own, and I love the build. I love how they start off the song very small, very somber, really building itself up. And when we get to that ending crescendo of A Son of Your Own, it just like washes over you this giant wave of positive energy. Even though this is probably the most somber track out of the bunch, when it hits you so hard and you are left with nothing but this giant wave of emotion. And the emotion, even though is mostly positive, there's speckles of this like slight yearning, this mourning of loss of some kind, but it's really buried, it's really deep in that ocean that's being washed over you. And it's only when you kind of stop and you look down that you really feel it. It's such a great celebratory track, and a great way to get into the big track, the 24 minutes, almost 25 minutes of We Spin the World. And this track, I mean, it's their first big epic, and it might be their best. I might go on the record and say this might be their best. What I just love is the journey that we have on it, and it's a perfect epic in being a great journey. And all the time you're on this journey, the song never really falters. It never skips a beat. At no point does it ever trip. And what I really, really enjoy is that they switched it around a little bit. Most of the time with these big tracks, you have this big, meaty hook at the beginning that then gets reprised at the end. But this, they put the hook kind of in the middle of the track, so that you get used to it. It's smaller in approach, as you probably always do. You always want to like provide it in its very basic raw form that then gets big and padded later on. But what I really enjoy is that it sounds like kind of the smaller somber moments of the Circle of Life on The Lion King. Like the two are very, very similar in how they approach the song. And what I really like is you have the big powerhouse hit that brings and catapults it up, and they don't hit you hard at that point. They wait a little bit and they bring it even further up, and then it finally hits you right in the face. That final guitar work, that like it is in the one hand the same theme that we had at the very beginning of the track, but the way that they bring it forth again at the end, it breathes so much new life into it. And it just, like, I can't help but like close my eyes. This is one of those moments where you close your eyes and you just start to weep because it's so powerful. And I can't help but just like do that whole fist in the air, banging it out. It's like, yes, that's what I love about music. And that's what I love about this track. Like if I'm engaged with this track, I always find myself getting emotional and start the tears to well up. Brilliant. And then we come into Beyond the Door, and like for any other track, We Spin the World would have been a perfect closing piece. Like I wouldn't want to follow that up with anything. Like that would be trying to follow up like Supper's Ready, or following up Thick as a Brick with some kind of small track at the end. But these guys decided to follow it up with Beyond the Door, which I've already talked about. And in that case, this is the only case where I will applaud them for ending it, because even though We Spin the World had a perfect closing piece for this album, Beyond the Door starts off almost as like the credits are rolling and now we're kind of watching people leave the auditorium, but it slowly builds itself back up into the beginning of the doorway. And it is literally, now that we're beyond the doorway, what's next? So yeah, overall, this album I love. Like I return to it so very often. Like if I'm in a bad mood, and let's face it, this year, oh boy, I have been in a bad mood. This is something that I will return to and find myself really engaged with it, and it will always pick up my spirits. I might not necessarily be fully in a good mood when I'm listening to it, but I'm always in a better mood than when I first started listening to it. So it's obvious that this album, let's do this properly then. A Doorway to Summer by Moon Safari is an absolute masterpiece. There's really no way that I can say that it isn't. There's no filler. There's no moment on this album that isn't perfect. It's one of those very rare albums that is, from start to finish, perfect. If you haven't listened to this at this point, what are you doing? Go out and listen to it. You're going to find something that you'll love off of it. I almost guarantee it. Unless this type of music doesn't really do anything for you, at which point, I can't help you. Yeah, so that's about it. That's about it for A Doorway to Summer by Moon Safari. What do you guys think? I want to know what you guys think about this band or this group, as well as this album. As I mentioned, it's I always feel like Moon Safari is criminally underrated, and I really wish that more people talked about them, because they're just such a good band with a capital G. So yeah, let me know about your thoughts about this, if you love it or if you are only lukewarm about it. I can't see anybody actually like actively hating this album, but let me know your own comments by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best, and until next time, notes out.